Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Today I bring you tweets from July 19th. And the first one is, thank you to Novartis for not increasing your prices on prescription drugs. Likewise to Pfizer. We are making a big push to actually reduce the prices, maybe substantially, on prescription drugs.
Yes, it's an honor to have the opportunity to address these tweets with you, Betsy, and to try to decode them and figure out what all our president is trying to say here and saying in between the lines. And we have to keep up the Trump tweets, decoding the Trump drops, the T clearance, because Q don't exist no more as far as I can tell since July 4th. So we'll go into that soon why, but I might say what I always like to say is, we told you so. Anyway, with this particular tweet, this is his war on the big pharmaceutical companies. They're collapsing. They tried to fight for a while. They tried to push it out to other places. They tried to make threats. Some of them hung themselves. Some of them they killed. There is a gigantic war going on behind the scenes between Trump and the big pharmaceutical companies. And he's basically saying, you are not going to gouge Americans. You will stop this. And if you do not, I will simply go after you with RICO charges, monopoly charges, antitrust, gouging, you name it. These companies are horrible. They kill people. They're part of the opioid war that he has started against them. These are people who produce pills that kill people and then ship them out of the country and ship them back into the country to be sold on the street. Because why? They're losing a little bit of money because they're not making the hand over fist profits that they were making before Trump came to power. So tough luck, Big Pharma.
Okay, the next tweet. The Democrats have a death wish in more ways than one. They actually want to abolish ICE. This should cost them heavily in the midterms. Yesterday, the Republicans overwhelmingly passed a bill supporting ICE.
And even though the Republican in name only, Paul Ryan, has obstructed, has resisted, has basically been a Democrat ever since Trump came to power, he let the person that he wants to win the position of being the Speaker of the House, his assistant, McCarthy, bring this forward so that it would look like some political assets had been created by stating that we wish to follow the law. Of course, we cannot kill ICE members who are the law enforcement agents.
Well, you meant the program, not the members.
No, I mean that they have come out and said they want to kill anyone who is in ICE. They want to abolish ICE. And they have gone and tried to take over again and again illegally the offices of ICE throughout the country. And this was supported by Democrats, and this was part of their resistance plan. Well, here is what's going to happen. That was a political maneuver to say it. Nobody believed that these people who have $18 billion from Soros's Open Society Foundation that have filtered down into Antifa and Black Lives Matters and now groups like Abolish ICE. Trump wants to make that the banner for the Democrats because that is nothing more than the same kind of nonsense of not having borders, not having police, not having immigration, not deporting MS-13. This is just crazy talk. The more they want to do this, the better. So a bill was put on the floor of the Congress. Of course, it probably won't go anywhere, but it was voted in. The Republicans voted in favor of it, and 167 Democrats voted against it. In other words, and many of them abstained. In other words, they were saying,
I believe there was one Republican in there too.
Oh, really?
But
okay.
Basically, you've got your globalists who and their street thugs are the mercenaries for these globalists that won't get out and do their street fighting themselves. And so they have to continue to vote for the position that the globalists want, which are open borders so that we can be overrun by an invasion of illegal aliens.
Absolutely. And yes, for the Republicans, it brings cheap labor, and for the Democrats, they think it brings them votes. But no longer is it going to be that way. We have more jobs than people to fill them, even if the illegals are taking the jobs. We have more prosperity than ever before. It's unbelievable what's happening. What was it, some 80 points that you just put up on Truth News headlines of the successes of Trump in the last...
It's just overwhelming, isn't it?
It is astounding. These things that he's done already, 10 of those would have been plenty for any president for their entire 4-year term. He's done 80 of them, and there were many that weren't on there that I had noticed myself. So he's actually done more than any president. So I want to say to those people who are the anti-ICE people, the people who don't believe in immigration and customs enforcement, in other words, law and order, and you want MS-13 to come and continue to kill, you want these unbelievable, recently voted in sanctuary city states, but sanctuary city cities like San Francisco just voted to allow in local elections illegals to vote. So in other words,
what they do is they do this in nudging. That's what Cass Sunstein was all about, a little nudge. So it's not that they can vote in larger elections, it's that they can vote in local elections. Once we're all comfortable with that, you watch, then they'll push the next level and the next level.
If they keep up this kind of extreme left liberalism, what they call progressive, which is really fascism, we will ask them to leave the Union. We won't wait for them to secede, because what they're doing is completely illegal. Because here's the deal, folks. If you really are anti-ICE, you're anti-police, then I recommend you go spend a few nights in a border prison, a prison near the border, and make some new friends, some illegal aliens, perhaps some MS-13s. And after they do to you what they do to you, then in a week or two, when you come out of there, we'll ask you if you're still anti-ICE.
Okay, the next two tweets are about the fake news media. I'm going to read them together. The fake news media is going crazy. They make up stories without any backup, sources, or proof. Many of the stories written about me and the good people surrounding me are total fiction. Problem is, when you complain, you just give them more publicity. But I'll complain anyway. And then the fake news media wants so badly to see a major confrontation with Russia, even a confrontation that would lead to war. They are pushing so recklessly hard and hate the fact that I'll probably have a good relationship with Putin. We are doing much better than any other country.
Okay, let's just go back here. On this first one, he's talking about lies like Kelly's out as the
his chief of staff, and then Mulvaney's going to be put in. I know everybody sends me that article, and I'm like, folks, have you vetted it?
You know how many times that has come out as news? Probably 20 times. It's all a lie. Every time they take the time to say, no, it's a lie. Well, what he's saying here is, no matter if you complain, if you tell the truth, if you try to override the truth with these tweets, what do? Then they get more publicity, you get more publicity, but what they don't know is Trump is playing them. Trump controls the mainstream media. They're a bunch of bimbos. And even the alternative media is all driven by these tweets and what he says. So we oftentimes interpret and do decodes of any news conferences that he has, press, any type of press that he has, anytime he speaks, because there's always subliminal messages going on in between the lines, because he can't come out and be as mean as he would have to be to confront this evil.
Well, wait a minute. I wouldn't call that subliminal messaging. I would just say that it's deeper meaning.
Yes, right. Well, I backed off. I said subliminal messages, or what I mean is other things in between the line. So it's in between the lines, because he can't just come out and tell the whole truth. Like if he did, fake news media, that's not a good enough name for them. You'd have to use explicatives if you want to describe the fake news media. They're liars. It's propaganda. It's yellow journalism. It's stupidity beyond imagination. It's the Trump derangement syndrome, on and on and on. They have gone crazy beyond crazy. They demanded that the deep state, which they say doesn't exist, needs to rise up and overthrow Trump. Now think of that. At the moment that they said that, the mainstream media, who said the deep state doesn't exist, they're so upset, they're so crazy, as he says up here, he says that they're trying recklessly hard, pushing recklessly hard. They push so hard, they reveal who they are. They're the deep state. They're screaming to themselves that they have no other option but to just attack Trump with every name they can call him. You know, they've been calling him Hitler since the second that someone insinuated that he'd be someone who might run for president. They've been calling him every name in the book, and now they have no more names. So what do? They call them their own names. It's nothing more than projection. But it's beautiful because it shows that he totally has them like the tail that wags the dog. He has them under his control. All he has to do is tweet one tiny thing. For instance, he tweeted, he's going to have a second summit. and they all lost their minds again. And then again, they do things like demand that the military come out and take Trump out of office, demand that he be impeached, demand that he be assassinated, demand that we have World War III, demand that...
Well, this is an information war, and they are losing big time because the media was the spokesperson, was the mouth for these globalists, and that's through which their message came out to all we the people. We the people, we've awoken. And even Fox News. I mean, we've been talking over the last few months about how Fox News is just as fake as the rest of them, people. And oh my goodness, people were just so upset about that. But on this day, we saw Fox News commentators just losing it. I was in the radio and I was listening to Neil Cavuto, and I could not believe how he exposed himself as being a huge, big-time globalist working in an anti-American way.
And we pointed out why that happened. There's a system that they all get their words from. That's the reason sometimes in the same night, the same time, all the mainstream media is saying the exact same phrase. And this has been demonstrated again and again. They have a system called AVID, ISIS Management Leader Plus, which tells them what to say. But in this case, we are quite certain that they did not get told what to say. And the reason is there was nothing to say. Because if they tried to take apart Trump for saying that the intelligence community can't be trusted, then all anyone would have to do, which has happened in the last 2 days, show that the intelligence community has raised their hand and taken oaths again and again and perjured and lied so much that you can't believe anyone at the head of any intelligence community during the time of Obama. So, what did he do? He took his slip of his words, but instead of saying, and really, the truth of the matter is, he said this over and over again, and he even plays clips now on his tweets to show that he said over and over again, yeah, Russia meddled, so did China, so did others, so did Russian nationals, so do we. On and on. He said it. Of course he said it.
But they just want him to say that only Russia meddled. That's what they want.
And that Russia colluded, and this is where he slipped up, because he was referring to both Russian collusion and Russian meddling at the same time because of the stupid questions that were being asked and the back and forth where Putin made complete mincemeat of Robert Mueller to say, come on over and let's take care of this. And by the way, now Russia has filed and said which U.S. officials they want to interrogate over the Bill Browder $1.5 million theft from Russia, which everybody knows happened, and he even became a British citizen to skirt around that. And so during that, yes, Trump basically was saying, really, in between the lines, look for yourself. They haven't given us any evidence. And what was Putin saying? No evidence yet. Show me some evidence. And the evidence that has been presented in a law, in America, in a lawsuit against Mueller, Mueller's losing because he can't produce any evidence. And then what did they ignore in the summit? That they said, let's use Syria as an example. We communicated politically. We communicated economically. We communicated militarily better than ever before, totally coordinated. We had actually no incidents. We both fought what we considered to be the enemy, and in some cases, civilians were killed. Yes, they admitted that. That's never admitted. They admitted that what's going on in southern Syria right now is an example of their cooperation, and even the bombings when Israel bombed the Iranian Guard. Russia did not retaliate. America did not retaliate. What is going on, as they said, in Syria can be an example of what can go on anywhere in the world, where we can take a horrible, horrible scenario, in that case where Obama was paying over $1 billion a year for ISIS and other billions of dollars for other mercenary groups to rip apart Syria. What happened when Obama stopped funding it? When they started communicating with Russia, we can move towards peace. And he said, watch Syria. It can be the example of what we can do anywhere. In other words, we can denuclearize. We can help North Korea. They've already started helping in the North Korea situation just today and yesterday. Very seriously, Russia did. So what we see here is the lie that previous presidents did not get along with Russia or was in a Cold War with Russia. That's lies. And you see that with Obama sending Hillary over with the reset button, and then they gave them their tech city, gave them our technology, gave them $450 million to build a uranium enrichment plant, and so on and so forth. And going to something that I need to address right now. Gerald, Gerald. Thank you. I have made this mistake a number of times.
Who is Gerald?
He is a listener.
Okay.
And he said, I mixed up uranium-235 and 238. Yes, I did. I listened to the tape, and it's the opposite of what I said. I sometimes do that. It's like the second or third time I've done that, and I've come back and apologized, and I apologize again. Of course, we know 238 is natural, 235 is fissile. You can make bombs out of it. So when I was saying that they were taking the uranium-238 from Russia, from the missiles, and bringing them here, what I should have said is they were taking the uranium-235, downgrading it to 238, bringing it here to Paducah, Kentucky, enriching it to 235, and then using it in our nuclear facilities. So thank you for that correction.
Okay, so the next tweet continues on about those Russian meddling, and many times, and Fox and Friends guests showed some clips there. And Trump says the fake news wants no part of that narrative. Too bad they don't want to focus on all the economic and jobs records being set, which leads right into the next tweet. Really big jobs meeting today at the White House, 3 p.m.
Yes, the character assassination, the ad hominems against Trump are absolutely ridiculous. And we have to make something very clear. They showed the clips saying that he admits that there is Russian meddling. Now, that meddling was the meddling that was put in the Joint Intelligence Community report on Russian meddling in the 2016 election. Actually, it was in just general elections, but it was given out in December of 2016. And what did it say? It spent literally, I believe the numbers were, there were 5,000 people involved in the report. Now, that's just unbelievable. And $50 million was spent on it. And when you read it, and I've read every painful word of it, it is so stupid. It took a previous report from years before where they had analyzed Russia Today, the news agency, which I'd never heard of before until they told me about it, and Sputnik, which is another news agency, and they said they meddled because they have more viewers now than they had before. And literally, they go into infinite amount of charts, analysis, computer graphic imaging, you name it. They spent a fortune to create a fake report saying that the Russians are coming because of two news agencies that most Americans don't know exist. And there's nothing that actually is untruthful being said there. So now they made them file as agents of Russia, which is completely absurd. They continue, and they haven't stopped them, and they're still saying the same things they said during the presidential election, RT and Sputnik, saying the same exact things now. Nobody stopped them. Why? Because it wasn't Russian meddling. The other thing, half a paragraph about Dmitry Alperovich's, though they don't name him, pathetic assessment that there was Russian hacking of the Democratic National Committee server. Complete nonsense, been proven to be false again and again and again. So when Trump says he accepts that analysis that the Russians meddled, he's accepting that stupid report. There was also another stupid report.
And it doesn't mean he can't accept other reports that they may not know about.
Correct. And there was another stupid report done by Clapper. And then there's this stupid Russian dossier, which, believe it or not, is a report, but it was never actually used. There was no intelligence whatsoever used to start Crossfire Hurricane. And as we know now, it was Brennan who lied. He heard that the State Department had received a call from someone in Estonia who said that Russians were involved, had dirt on Putin. It wasn't even his department. It was the State Department. So the State Department started their whole thing. He overheard that. And so he made up a lie that he received, what did he call it? Communication over the wire. He mentioned it, he said chatter over the wire. He mentioned a bunch of things, and he never once said what it was, because never once did anybody state that there was any intelligence ever received that started the Crossfire Hurricane counterintelligence operation with Peter Strzok, who we now know is probably a CIA section chief. Well, you can't be both CIA section chief and the second in charge of the FBI counterintelligence unless that was constructed ahead of time, and he is, in fact, some kind of enemy of the state. You don't do that. Those agencies don't do that. You can't do that. And so when they said they had an interagency group, a small interagency group, I thought to myself, well, that's pretty odd, because those two things can't exist. One is outside of the country, the CIA. One is inside of the country, the FBI. They don't cross over. They have to even get different warrants from the FISA court. But when they went after the FISA court warrant for Carter Page, it was with the absolute 100% supposed proof that he was a Russian spy, which he was the opposite. He was a CIA asset who had been used against Russians. So now we get the picture. Peter Strzok was the interagency small group. He and whoever he was having sex with, Lisa and whoever else, obviously. This guy is completely out of control.
The fornicating bureau.
The fornicating bureau.
Idiots.
Yes,
right,
of idiots, exactly.
And I want, when you get to a point that you can stop, I want to say something here.
Say it.
Okay. I just want folks to kind of hear the Betsy's Cliff Notes version of where we're going with this. All right. So you know what the end game is. So as you listen to Thomas, basically our intelligence agencies, our community, is a propaganda intelligence. It's fake intelligence, and they're there for the most part to feed the president this fake propaganda intelligence to keep him from looking at the real enemy, which turns out to be the Brits. And we've done a lot of articles on that about who's behind the spying operation, and it all goes back to the Privy Council and to the England. And we're going to do an audio on this particular subject very soon. But there was a piece that I posted at Truth News Headlines that turned out to be an amazing article, but it was written by somebody called Lord Conrad Moffat Black. And when I read it one way, but then when Thomas, who is a genius, got a hold of it, he realized that what it was a very sophisticated form of propaganda. Can you say a few words about that before that story gets so big that people think that it is all that it is?
Yes. This person you mentioned, he is basically royalty. He's a lord, he's a baron, and we're looking to see if he's in the Privy Council. He probably is.
He was in the Canadian Privy Council but got kicked off. And again, we're going to do some deeper research on him, but can we speak to the piece about how and why he wrote that the way he did?
Yes, Lord Conrad Black is a great genius. He's probably the most experienced person in newspapers and in news in the world. He probably controls more newspapers than any other person in the world, in Canada, America, and Britain, all over the world. And whoever wrote this article was utterly brilliant. I started reading it and it took my breath away.
Well, they say he wrote it.
That's what they say. Mm-hmm. I say his highest level propaganda machine wrote it because it was so craftily created that you would not know what it was. You would actually think that he was on the side of Trump. It starts off saying Trump has won this battle with the deep state.
It's very pro-Trump.
It sounds pro-Trump.
But they throw the intelligence community under the bus.
But I just want to use one phrase he used to show his brilliance.
Okay.
Self-emasculating non-entity as a description for Jeff Sessions. That is exactly what Jeff Sessions is. The language in this was so elevated, I can actually say, for the first time in years, I read an article that was basically out of mainstream media that was brilliantly written, accurate, and it showed intelligence, to be quite frank with you.
But what it was doing is that it was throwing the intelligence community, the U.S. intelligence community, under the bus, because they do not want you to look to see where it's really coming from, which is the Privy Council and the spying groups over in Britain.
Yeah, this Lord
Conrad Moffat Black.
Baron Black.
Baron Black.
Was so convincing, it was so beautiful that I thought, oh my gosh, he must be listening to Truth News Headlines. Because he was saying all that we said, and then at the end I went, but wait a second. He just threw as you said, Betsy, the American intelligence community under the bus. They were squished. The bus backed up, squished them again, backed up, went over. I mean, they were flat by the time this article was done because there was no reference to Stephen Halper, no reference to anyone in Britain, no reference to any of the Privy Council.
Did you see any
Jeffrey
of that?
Patty, no reference to SCL, no reference to anything British.
So what's happened is Truth Warriors, we've gotten close enough. We're really getting close over the target. And so now they're having to throw their own at us to keep us from who the real enemy is.
Oh, yes. And what we're going to be revealing soon about this is going to be even more amazing. And you are finding amazing articles like The article you just found on the election system and software, which demonstrates what we said and brings in even other factors that make it so definitive that what we have been putting out and telling you about these rigged election machines, absolutely rigged, beyond your imagination. But we want to get Michael McKibben on the line because he can explain this. I don't want to get my, I don't want to get my neck out there and not be able to explain it in a way that is perfectly accurate with those people who are, computer buffs.
So that was just a little hint of what we're going to be doing next. I am going to put the article in the link. Inside that link, you're going to find all these tweets, and you'll find a few little articles that I'm leaving for you. You might want to read up on that so that when we get to that audio, you know what we're talking about. Did you want to say anything more about the big jobs?
Well, yeah, I'm going to say one thing about the other thing first, and that's that with Brennan, he is a rabid dog. Why is he a rabid dog? It's now been found out that he started all this, the part that actually has an official date with Peter Strzok, and that the two of them invented it. There's no intelligence. There was never any intelligence. And there is not any reason in America to ever create a CIA counterintelligence operation that goes to the FBI into the counterintelligence operation against an election, someone in a campaign, or a president. That's treason. That's insanity. And then how do we know that he is so guilty, Brennan? Because he's the only one who went and told the Gang of Eight, the people who are in charge of the intelligence committees and in charge of the Senate and in charge of the House. He gave them each a separate report on these things, and each report was different. Now the people have talked together, and the honest people say, well, that isn't what he told me. He told me something completely different. So Brennan, as we said, is so compromised that the louder he yells, the more he just points the finger of guilt at himself. And he basically had turned the CIA into Hillary's campaign center. It was pathetic. Comey and Loretta Lynch and John Kerry and John Brennan, they might have well have been on her campaign
it's worse than
payroll.
That.
It was pathetic.
It's worse than that because in the end, these people worked together to try to overthrow the United States government and overthrow a sitting president. People, if they had been successful, we wouldn't be here discussing it. It would have been a done deal. Everything was coming down on us. And
the proof of that is in what they're saying now. Any minute, Clapper's going to join into the cacophony chorus, which is a chorus of ignorance and stupidity and fake intelligence trying to cover their rear before they go to jail. And that's that. John Brennan has come out, and what has he said? If you're a patriot, you can't vote Republican. You have to vote Democratic. What has Comey said? You have to vote Democratic. In other words, they're telling you what they've been doing all along, which is total supporters of the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton. Even to this very moment, they would still imagine in their demented minds that Hillary Clinton could become the president of the United States based upon the George Soros trick of overthrowing an election. So these guys have shown exactly who they are, total die-hard Hillary Democrats.
No, they're fascist, communists. So I just want to say that the White House did have a meeting. They're going to be signing, the president's going to be signing an executive order, and they're setting up the Council for the American Worker, and that will call for immediate steps to address the vocational crisis in America. And we're going to need skilled workers if all this manufacturing is going to be happening here.
Education is a failure. Public education, and the federal intervention in the states' rights of education made it 100 times worse. What this really is goodbye, Department of Education. It should not be a cabinet level. It should not be an agency. The federal government has little to nothing to do except returning the federal dollars that might be earmarked for education. Otherwise, most of their policies have ruined education. So, what is this? Goodbye, Department of Education. What is this? The third jobs, when he says jobs, jobs, jobs. These are the jobs, vocational jobs, exactly as you said. And as they merge these two departments and get rid of the Department of Education, this is exactly what we predicted would happen, by the way, and we believe should happen, and we stand for completely.
I told you so. The European Union just slapped a $5 billion fine on one of our great companies, Google. They truly have taken advantage of the U.S., but not for long.
No.
Who? The European Union or Google?
Both.
Okay.
And I want to make perfectly clear that Donald Trump does not like Google. Okay, he's saying they're a great company because he's saying they're a very big company. They're so big that our Congress and Senate won't go near them. Right? They'll go towards Facebook and then do what? Nothing. So what is really being said here? The fee that's on here, 5, it just went up from 2.5 billion to 5 in a matter of a couple days, and that's nothing because they're going to get that. Australia already got their 2.5, and they have 8.8 in lawsuits against Google and Facebook for security issues. But this is basically because of what was called Article 13 was passed, or the GDPR, which has caused complete and absolute chaos in the internet in Europe. Basically, Europe is going to have to be cut off from the internet. And Americans, many, many, many American companies, news agencies have cut off Europe.
And their commerce.
Totally, because you cannot comply with these stupid laws. These are
Yes.
Soros laws, and it takes away freedom, and it takes away any ability for anyone to do anything that is not locked in their little black box of their digital limitation created by Eric Schmidt and George Soros. And
it's the small companies that were going to hurt the most over there because they don't have the money to comply with these new internet standards if they're selling goods and services on the internet.
yeah, so what's happening is these stupid American companies went to Luxembourg, they went to Ireland, they went to any place that would give them a tax break, and then those places lied to them, got them set up, pulled them in. Now they're hitting them with huge tax fees, fines, and they're hitting them with sanctions, and now they're hitting them with lawsuits. And so Trump is basically laughing at them. This is what this actually says is, you idiot Silicon Valley cardboard cutout imbeciles, I am going to take you down. And the Silicon Valley fake people like Elon Musk, no, they're not who they say they are. They're fake. That was the Obama fake out. They all are going to leave. But what is in between the lines here is Trump is laughing at them saying, you stupid idiots, I told you if you leave America before I give you better tax incentives to stay, they'll simply get you in those other countries because they're crooked. They'll trick you, they'll pull you in, they'll get you later. And because it's tax evasion, you have to pay it. And it's their laws. And their laws are stricter than our laws. So if you want to go to the European Union, or you want to go to Thailand, or you want to go anywhere else but America, you will come back, and he will be laughing at you saying, I told you so.
The next tweet has the fake news media just going bonkers. The summit with Russia was a great success, except with the real enemy of the people, the fake news media. I look forward to our second meeting so that we can start implementing some of the many things discussed, including stopping terrorism, security for Israel, nuclear, goes into a next tweet, proliferation, cyber attacks, trade, Ukraine, Middle East peace, North Korea, and more. There are many answers, some easy and some hard to these problems, but they can all, and he capitalizes all, be solved.
The word all just said, go ahead, McCain, set your hair on fire. Oh, that's right, you don't have any hair. Just let your head explode. Oh, that's right, it's already exploded. Just let your mouth go awry.
How do we know that he's alive?
We don't, and his wife now is already making political statements for him.
Yes.
We don't know that he said any of those
I think
things.
we need proof of life, a proof of conscious life.
A proof of the fact that he actually knows where he is and who he is, which is what Pelosi does not know. But it's okay. I love Pelosi leading the Democrats. It's just a beautiful thing. But McCain, you are an awful person. You own... Your big stock is in Raytheon. And so what did you always say when you snuck into countries which you weren't supposed to sneak into because of the Logan Act, just because you're on the Armed Services Committee and the Appropriations Committee? You were doing business with foreign agents who are our enemies, and you should go to jail. That's all there is to it. We have you with ISIS. We have you with al-Nusra. We have you with the... Oh, don't even get me started. So when he said this, he's going to have a second meeting. Poor McCain probably went blind. Obama went out of his mind because this completely destroys everything that he is fighting for. George Soros is going to be so mad at him. And we can do this now because Obama's billions of dollars to ISIS and Al-Qaeda no longer go out to them. We can do this now because we've already demonstrated in Syria through Trump's intervention that we don't have to be at war and we don't have to always threaten Armageddon. So here is what I'm about to say, and this is sad, but I want to first say, again, Russia's helping with North Korea, and this is the deal. Trump just declared the end of the Cold War in this tweet. He just said all problems can be solved. Nuclear proliferation, cyber attacks, that's these supposed meddlings. Trade, that's the tariffs, that's the sanctions. Ukraine, that's the false accusations against Russia, which once that's cleared up, the pipelines flowing, oil will be 1/10 of the price once all the pipelines are flowing that are being fought over, which pipelines in the Middle East, which he says here. Peace in the Middle East. North Korea, denuclearization. This is the end of the Cold War. He has declared it. And that is why these poor, pathetic parrots in their echo chambers are going to continuously go out of their mind from now on. It will never stop now because he has declared the end of the Cold War. Second meeting. There's going to be third meetings and fourth meetings, and he already said he's sending his National Security Council members over to start working on these issues immediately. The end of the Cold War would mean we wouldn't need almost all of the news reported by the mainstream media. Wouldn't that be great? And we might actually hear some news around the world that might be some truth about the trouble that's being stirred up by the CIA and the rogue CIA and the Brits and their election manipulation. And then maybe we could start to fight for democracy when we started to see that democracy is actually in our news, which at this point it is not.
And in the next tweet, we have a little video clip of Donald Trump on January 11th, 2017, which shows that, quote, Trump recognized Russian meddling many times, close quote.
And he said could be Russian, could be Chinese, could be North Korean, could be Russian nationals, could be others, could be independent people, could be people in our country. He named all the people who actually were the very people that were doing the meddling. Mm-hmm. Okay? But the only one that wasn't doing any meddling was the Russians. I mean, we actually do not have a single speck of proof that the Russians meddled. Not one single speck of proof. And that's what he's actually pointing to. But he had to, as I said with my long explanation, accept the multiple reports from the intelligence agencies that said that news agencies in America affected. Yeah, okay, they affected. To what percent? 0.0001% of Americans were affected by that. Just like the same number of Americans who were affected by the 2.5 million pieces of Russian material that was taken off of Facebook and given to Conrad Catering during the lawsuit that Putin made reference to, which they said, why are you giving us 2.5 million pieces of Russian garbage, which has nothing to do with the election, and where are the translations? And Mueller said, well, we don't have any translations. And the Russians said, then how do you know that it affected anybody? And how do you even know what it says? These are the embarrassments that Putin was referring to about Mueller. And then he pulled down his pants in public and said, you want to talk to the 10 people from the GRU? Come on over anytime. You're welcome. I'll even, I'll get you coffee and even a little vodka at night. You can question all of them. But we're going to question Bill Browder, and they already put in the request for those people who were the crooked, lying, cheating.
Don't get all excited because I saw a headline go by. I haven't dipped into it that Trump said, no, you can't get these people to be questioned. So we have to see how that pans out, okay? The last tweet reads, will the Dems and fake news ever learn? This is classic. Okay, what's exciting about this one, Thomas, is I actually had this posted on Truth News Headlines this morning, but I had a longer version of it. And if you're interested in seeing it, it is in the article, the link in the description box. And what it is a clip of Hillary Clinton in 2010 talking about how grand it's going to be when we have this great relationship with Russia. So, they just use Russia as a whipping boy for anything that they want to put a fright and hatred into the American people. They whip out their Russia narrative.
Absolutely. She says that in this little cut that she wants a strong and stable Russia. She practically demands it, says the world would be better for it. And as far as I can say, it looked like she was French kissing Vladimir Putin. But that is nothing in comparison to the way that Obama would bend over and have relations with Putin, because they were more than in bed with one another. And Hillary, Oh my gosh. Hillary pushed the reset button, folks. Hillary was she wanted to be best friends forever with Putin. But now, anyone who mentions Putin's name is evil and must be locked up in Gitmo, even though she herself was one of the biggest advocates for Putin that has ever been in Washington, D.C.
Okay. You have a few minutes. So we're finished with the tweets, but is there anything on your mind that you feel that we need to know before we record tomorrow?
Well, I'll just say one more thing about the election systems and software and what has just been recently revealed. It is unbelievable, folks. The deep research of Americans for Innovation and James and others and us revealed that...
The conclave is growing, and it's very exciting, the talented people that are joining the conclave.
And a shout out to MM, another M&M, not Michael McKibben, but another M&M. Right. Shout out to some really cool people that have been feeding us interesting information that then we have to really look closely at, and it's coming up really good. So we want to talk about this for a second. All the machines in America are rigged for elections, every one that's digital. Now, you may vote on a piece of paper, but the tallies are taken on computers. And those computers are all owned by 5 or 6 companies. I can name them, Hart InterCivic, Smartmatic, Dominion, Diebold, Sequoia, all of them. It doesn't matter. Every single electronic voting machine that calculates the tallies used generally by the Secretary of State of each state. What happens with those is they can be accessed remotely by all the companies that service them because they have the same software. It's called OPTECH, OPTECH. So OPTECH was created by the CIA in Venezuela for Jimmy Carter, who created an organization that then spread that all over the world until basically almost every election is ran by the software called OPTECH. Well, OPTECH is the most vulnerable software imaginable. We have now got absolute confirmation that every one of these election machines and the companies that own them have an ability to go in and do diagnostics on these over the phone. Wirelessly through the computer, through wireless connections or through a landline connection, but they go into the computer from their headquarters and they can adjust and correct the machine. Oh, well, that's bad, right? Oh, that's really bad. But then they say this. When they were asked, they said, oh, these machines will only turn on the modem inside of the machine when they are sending a broadcast signal out. You can't really send one in. And then the next question they ask them is, well, why do you have this? Well, it's so that our people from our company can go in and adjust it. And so...
Everybody knows what PC Anywhere is. It's so that somebody that's not with you can come into your PC and work on it.
Everybody uses it.
But
that's what's in all of these. But even worse than that, did you hear that incongruency?
Mm-hmm.
That the modem only dials out, that's the safety feature. But then they say anybody from their company can dial in at any time and work on it diagnostically. And then they found out that anyone standing anywhere near the machine or within blocks of the machine can, with a tiny app that has PC Anywhere, has been broken out and hacked so many times that it is the worst thing you could possibly use, because anybody then, once you are online, can get in, override you, and change those votes in those election machines.
And so all these many years when we were disappointed that our candidates weren't winning, but we could look around America and see that that candidate had so much support, the machines have been rigged.
So we've told you about man in the middle. We've told you about the corruption. We've told you about all of this. But now when we found out this and we saw the research and the vetting of it, it is astounding, because we know the following, and this is just amazing. Many films were made of people at the Secretary of State office after the votes were taken to the Secretary of State's office before the final tallies were given out.
Which state?
Many states.
Okay.
Because they set up these cameras in these offices to see if anyone was going to go in and try to get to these machines and check them and change the votes. So what do we have? We have dozens of videos of the top officials walking into their office, walking over to the locked cabinet, standing there with their phone, playing with their phone, and then walking out, folks. That was because they accessed PC Anywhere and they changed the votes. the tallies in the two cells. That's all it comes down to, is literally 10 seconds of manipulation through PC Anywhere, which has been hacked so many times. And this was established in 2002 that this was able to be done. These machines, again, all the way through 2007, were proven to still be vulnerable to this. And at this point, none of those machines and the companies that make them, will answer any more questions about this. None of the people will answer any questions about OpTech. They won't talk about the software, and they won't talk about these demonstrations that show that any one of these machines can easily be hacked by anyone on their telephone who has any acumen in this area whatsoever. So, folks, we have to go to paper. We cannot let any of these vote tallies go into a machine.
Yes, because see, here's the thing. When you do a paper ballot, that's in the three-dimensional world. And when you put it through a Scantron, even, I'm going to use that system because, of course, if you go up to a computer and you just type in who you select, that automatically goes into another dimension. It's a digital dimension. And that's where the theft takes place and the corruption takes place in this digital realm. And you can't see, feel, and touch that, so you don't know.
You know, Betsy, you're so right. We have to get control of the elections because that's the duty of the people. That isn't the duty of our government. We are here to make sure that our government doesn't turn us into slaves. And sorry, we've been turned into slaves by these election machines.
If we have got to demand these paper ballots because we have to be able to count them physically. We need a bipartisan chain of custody. And if you remember back in Florida days when they were counting the ballots by hand and everybody was looking at the chads, what happens is you've got counters at the table and then you have people behind them watching the count. There's just many ways you eyeball it. All the voting needs to be taken in the three-dimensional world, not out in digital space. Okay. But here's what's so important. They have us believing that we need to have the results before we go to bed at night. We need to get out of that mindset. If the election is held in November, but people aren't seated until, or the states don't announce their votes until December, that's a whole month, maybe 6 weeks for these manual counts to occur. So we have to stop expecting the results to come election night. We need to wait until the hand counts are done.
And Betsy, we found out about this because as we were looking into these election machines, Smartmatic and all these machines being corrupt because of Mitt Romney winning the vote in Utah when we know he couldn't have, and then we found out that his son was running the Smartmatic election machines, and then we wondered, well, that's in 17 states, but what about the rest? And then we found OpTech, and we found Jimmy Carter's group for International Election Services, which basically then controls all the elections and has rigged them ever since. We were a little bit shocked because the closer we looked, you know what I'm about to say, it was a Brit, Lord Malik Brown, who owns Smartmatic, who was there in Venezuela, who was actually working out of the United Nations at that time to supposedly make elections good, but he made them bad, and he created OpTech, and he owns OpTech. He owns a great deal of the machines, and then Jeffrey Patty owns the manipulation of perception management during elections, and they come out with their Strategic Communications Laboratory in Cambridge Analytica, and they basically rig elections. So then we found out, oh my, not only are the elections rigged, but the machines are rigged. And now we find out every machine is rigged. And where does it go back to? The Privy Council.